So welcome to the PTC Talks, where we are honored by having Stephen from aPriori and David from PTC for a session on enterprise product cost management. But first, just a very quick introduction by me. And my name is Torbjörn Peterson. I'm the Alliance Manager for PTC here in the Nordics, leading these webinars where we also introduce some of our partners and customers for some inspiration on digital transformation to see what is possible and how to make things happen. And we are running all these webinars on Fridays at the same time, a couple of times a month, with topics around either manufacturing, services, or engineering. And all the recordings of the past webinars have also been recorded and also be found on the registration site. And the agenda for today is first a very quick overview of PTC by myself, and then Stephen and David will run the show, where they will also touch base on a few challenges, how to address these, and then also explain some of the business outcomes. And that then we're also having a Q&A session. So please keep your questions to the end, or you may also put them in the chat and we will pick them up later on. Next slide, Stephen. All right, perfect. So a little bit short about PTC for those who don't know about us. We are a global software company with a headquarters in Boston, and we provide market-leading solutions on IoT, augmented reality, PLM, CAD, SLM, and ALM through the digital thread to help companies to accelerate their digital transformation. Now over to you, David.
Right. So I'm David van Och, Senior Solution Consultant at PTC. And I used to be a customer of both PTC and aPriori in the past myself, implementing the software from both. Now, by integrating aPriori into Creo and windchill, factors such as cost and carbon can be understood on a components level as throughout the BOM assembly level, and form part of the target design parameters for a product. This enables all those developing the product at every stage of the design to be informed about where they are against target, and as a result, you can make more impactful design choices, rather than trying to retrospectively make changes that have far less effect and may cause greater issues and involve rework of the design, therefore slowing down the time to market aspect. Next slide, Steve. When making design choices that help reduce the CO2 within the materials used, or making design choices in the function of the manufacturing process, it can be a balance between the CO2 and cost. aPriori can help the design engineer strike the balance between both, while also ensuring that the desired component is manufacturable, something that can save considerable time, scrap, and waste when looking at alternative materials, different designs, and changes in the manufacturing approach as well. With this, I would like to introduce Steve Peck, VP Application Engineering and Solutions at aPriori Technologies.
Great, thanks a lot, David. Appreciate it, and welcome everybody. I look forward to be able to share some of the insights with you in regards to how aPriori can really help with the product development process and provide visibility to really cost, manufacturability, and sustainability at the right time in the process, which is really early, where you can have the biggest impact. So that is really aPriori's focus with our manufacturing insights platform to really help our customers and manufacturers really streamline their NPI process and look at factoring in costs so that they can hit profitability targets, get the decisions made early on so that products can be released on time, and the cycles that are typically happening at the end where engineering changes due to products that are over target cost, or engineering changes due to non-manufacturable designs, or long cycles with supply chain suppliers, for example, can be reduced, right? So our customers see significant benefits at various points along the process. So whether it's negotiating with a supplier based on the data that aPriori generates to have a fair, mutually beneficial negotiation, so that it's a win-win on both sides, and making sure that the right costs are being paid, the NPI cycles really reduced, and strategic supplier relationships being put in place with transparency in regards to fair costs that can be made. So different different aspects along the development process. And if we look at really some of the challenges and really opportunities by providing the insights from a cost, manufacturability, and sustainability standpoint, we look at it early on in the process. We have some organizations that are pricing and estimating and quoting, whether it's a build-to-print supplier or in the program management stage where prices are being set, being able to provide insight to quotes and pricing. And then really into design. So conceptual design through detailed design, being able to understand where you stand relative to cost and carbon targets, understanding what the cost drivers are on those parts, what's contributing to the CO2 content in the embedded content on the product, and being able to make decisions early on with that visibility and also get it out to the rest of the organization so that sourcing has an early view as to what's coming down the line. They can start to plan. Manufacturing can start to look at, do I build this product in-house? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the equipment? Or do I go to a supplier? What supplier do I choose based on the requirements of this product that I'm building? Where is the most cost-effective and green location to manufacture that product? So as we go through this, think about, the different areas where within a given organization and your organization, where there could be a potential impact and where some you potentially struggle and have room for improvement. So with aPriori, it really starts with the 3D CAD model. When we look at the IP, and aPriori has been around for the past couple of decades, and it all started with the notion of products get developed, designed, and oftentimes are over target cost. So how can we leverage the digital twin and the CAD definition to really provide those insights? And that's where it starts with aPriori. Directly loading in a creo model, for example, a part or an assembly, aPriori will interrogate that design, look at every feature on the part, every component in the bill of material, and simulate the manufacturing process within a digital factory. The digital factory, over 80 regions across the globe that represent all of the labor rates, the overhead rates, the energy costs, insurance costs, and the equipment and the materials in a given factor. So from the product definition, we digitally simulate the manufacturing process and the operations to build that part, including all the secondary operations of finishing and inspection, for example, packaging, and bubble up these insights such that anyone within the development process can have visibility early on. So from a design standpoint, sourcing, manufacturing, your program management folks, and executive leadership, understanding where you're at and where to focus ultimately, how to take action and drive value from those insights from a cost, manufacturability standpoint and sustainability standpoint. I think many of us have probably seen charts like this before, but really as we look at the development process, the further along we get in that process, the more difficult it is to drive cost out. So much of the cost, 70–80%, is baked in early on in the design process. And that's really where there's opportunity to introduce capabilities to really take advantage of the digital product definition, the tools that are available to simulate and really help drive innovation such that those decisions are made early on before anyone is going out and procuring tooling, for example, and too late in the process to really drive any particular big changes to drive cost out. And by looking at capabilities early on, we can have a significant impact there. So when we look at the aPriori manufacturing insights platform in conjunction with PTC windchill in Creo, really what we see is the ability to really take advantage of all the digital data that's been developed and managed and extend that digital thread with insights that can help with business decisions. So taking the CAD model and the production parameters that are associated with the product, aPriori's simulation will generate those insights interactively or in an automated approach, and then be able to bubble those up directly to people working within the interface, but also drive those back into windchill. So cost information, CO2 information, manufacturability scores, for example, so that it's now exposed throughout the enterprise and can be consumed to help with really informing everybody at the earliest stages and making decisions that ultimately will lead to products being released on time and at targets. When we look at the designer, really at the time of design, being able to interact with the CAD data that they're working with, on a daily basis, spending 8 hours in CAD designing product, getting feedback in for cost and where they stand from a CO2 standpoint, making sure that they're hitting targets and making the best decisions, in knowing really where to focus, right? Where are those parts that are going to cause problems that I'm going to be spending engineering time fixing because something is over target, or there's a manufacturing issue that bubbled up. So designers will be able to work interactively and know where to focus. And we'll see this just in a moment here when we get into the solution. The program management, by being able to have this visibility to cost in CO2, understand where you stand at a given milestone in the development process, you can make corrective actions as necessary to ensure that you're hitting targets. And everybody else within the organization, so whether that's your procurement folks that are going to be buying new products that are being developed, they can see what's coming down the line. They can understand where they should be expecting to set pricing with their suppliers to get a jump start on the procurement process and ensuring that they are selecting the right suppliers and ultimately getting a fair price for the product. Manufacturing, internal manufacturing, plant management, understanding, what needs to be manufactured, what equipment's required, whether they should be making that in-house or it should be going out to a supplier, and all other functions within the organization, being able to leverage the insights and contribute to the decision-making factor. So your experts that are looking at your sustainability folks, and your expert cost engineers, manufacturing engineers, procurement folks, getting the right data to the right people at the right time so that they can contribute and influence the product definition relative to the insights that are bubbled up with aPriori. So with that said, I want to jump into the product here, and we'll review the product working in conjunction with Creo in windchill and give you a feel for how this product actually works and what it can do and what it might mean within your organization. So we have a video that I'm going to start here. So typical product in assembly here. You see these scooters flying all over town everywhere these days. If we just hone in on a given component here in this assembly, this is a machined part, part of the rare brake assembly that's been designed within Creo. You can see within Creo, there's the ability to analyze this part with aPriori. So as a user, we simply invoke this command to cost the part in aPriori, and that's going to bring this part into the aPriori design environment. And here we can see we need to specify a few basic inputs. First is, how is it manufactured? Is it machined? Is it cast? Is it additively manufactured? where in the world is this being manufactured? That digital factory with all of the labor rates and overheads, the material. What is this part being made of? In this case here, it's a 6061 aluminum. And we're making 500,000 of these annually over the course of 3 years. So with those few basic inputs, the designer in real time is able to simulate the manufacturing of this component, understand the cost. We can see here the cost of this part at $15.14, with a breakdown of what the biggest contributors are. Material in this case is making up 45%, labor at 21%. There's some capital investment that's been captured in terms of fixturing and programming for this machined part. The way we got there is really by looking at every feature on this component and then running it through our algorithm for all the manufacturing processes. So a 3-axis process, a 4-axis, perhaps a 2-axis lathe and a 3-axis. We're looking at feasibility and then the most economic way to manufacture that. And in turn, really understanding all the operations. So here we have a breakdown of cycle time on the bandsaw, on the 3-axis mill, and then a reciprocating surface grinder to achieve surface finishes, looking at it from a cycle time and a cost perspective to understand really where the cost is coming from. And likewise, from a CO2 standpoint, the material and process, because we've simulated the manufacturing process, understand the energy consumption, where the material is coming from, and the type of process to manufacture it, in addition to manufacturing insights. So in this case here, we're bubbling up information about length to diameter ratios. Those pockets, in order to mill those out, we have some information here for the new engineers that don't really understand fully manufacturing, why that's a problem. Basically, there's a long skinny end mill needed to manufacture that process. So with that feedback, a designer can go back to CAD, make the changes, in this case here, increasing the radius and the fillet on the top of the part, a priori flagged as driving a lot of cycle time. Although it looks nice, it really functionally is not necessary. So that's been eliminated, and a priori can be reinvoked with a new scenario to basically simulate the after effect, essentially. Taking the feedback from a priori, updating the design so it's more manufacturable, and the big cost drivers have been eliminated. With a quick update to that design, we can see that the design guidance and the DFM risk from a manufacturing standpoint has gone from high to low on this part. We've eliminated the issues on this part that were bubbled up. So those length to diameter ratio issues, and to see the impact at any point, you can always run a comparison. So that in this case here, the design changes between these two designs. This could be a region change. Perhaps in this case here, it's Eastern China this is being manufactured in. But we can see here is the side-by-side comparison where we've eliminated the manufacturing issues. We've taken the cycle time from 17.5 minutes down to under 11 minutes, so 39% out of the cycle time. The CO2 has dropped as well. And we can see that the fully burdened cost has gone from $15.14 down to $12.37. So we took just over 18% out of the cost of this. If you think about making 500,000 parts a year for 3 years, that $3, has a significant impact. So looking at a different view of this whole process can be automated. We just looked interactively at how we could, as a designer, add those attributes. A priori can also mine the data directly from windchill and automatically process the components based on the inputs and move that data, the analysis data, back into windchill, so that now the designer hasn't even really touch this design. They come in within windchill, the results are there. They get an email notification on the parts that they've worked on. In this case here, some machine parts, some sheet metal parts, some plastic parts, and they're being pointed to the parts that really need attention. So you can see that this part here, we can now focus on the parts that need attention, have all the data visible within windchill. So in this workflow here, we're simply going in and looking at results to understand where there may be issues. So same part, but it was processed automatically. And in this case, we can launch into aPriori Workspace, which is really a collaboration tool. So the design was automatically analyzed as part of a workflow, reviewed, but the designer needs some input. They're not quite sure, in this case here, if they can modify this radius. So we go out and can bring in expertise from others. Perhaps this is a manufacturing expert, a design lead, or possibly sourcing. In this case here, I'm pinging my buddy Chris, asking if it's acceptable to increase that radius. Chris is going to get an email notification and be able to directly launch into this and provide feedback. So I have traceability of the decisions made throughout the process and real-time access to the experts that can really help with decision making. And with all this data that's been bubbled up, whether it's exposed through windchill or as part of the aPriori solution, there's an analytics platform so that I can look at, for example, a given program, what my targets were from a cost perspective, where I currently fall relative to those targets, and ultimately use the insights from aPriori to optimize the design throughout the process to get to the point where I'm achieving my targets, whether that's for cost or CO2, and perhaps I'm sourcing new product, looking at all the parts that have been analyzed, what my current cost is and what the should cost is on those components, knowing where to focus and then leverage the data. And it may be that there are some components that I'm actually getting a good price on, but that could be a risk. It could be an indication that a price increase is coming. And lastly, looking at the data through the lens of carbon. So material and process contribution, the big bubbles on the right there are my, parts that I really need to focus on if I want to drive carbon out. So quick overview of aPriori, the insights that can be bubbled up, how interactively information can be developed, can be gathered during the design process with Creo, but also in an automated process with windchill, where parts can be automatically processed, insights pushed directly back into windchill. So now that we have visibility throughout the enterprise in collaboration tools to get the input and make effective decisions to optimize the product. So with that said, we'll go to the Q&A session here and see if there are any questions that came in, and hopefully that was enlightening and shed some, open some eyes in terms of what it might mean to have these insights available.
Thanks a lot, Stephen and David, for sharing a lot of interesting insights here on product cost management. So now, as I said, over to the Q&A, and please, raise your hand and we will let you talk, through the call here. So let me see here. We are thinking we have some questions already in the chat as well. So what's the licensing structure for aPriori? That's the first question we have here.
Sure. So aPriori has different levels of capability that can be exposed depending on the requirements of the organization. It is a named user license, and the product is a SaaS solution within the cloud. We can, get into additional details of licensing through further discussions.
Right. We had one other question here also from Mikko. How about material data? Any possibilities to hook up aPriori with ANSYS Granta?
Sure, yes. So aPriori actually has a materials database that's part of the digital factory, and it has a starting set of materials. That data can be pulled in and updated basically with a spreadsheet import of the data very easily. So if there was data from Granta and master data that's available, the aPriori database can be basically linked to that and updated to be in sync and leverage, have a common set of data that would be used as it would be through the CAD tools or CAE tools or what have you.
Thank you, Stephen. Are all, let me see here, I think we had another question here. Are all available Creo versions compatible with aPriori design?
Yes, aPriori maintains compatibility for past releases going back a few years, but also keeps pace with new releases. So as Creo 10, Creo 11 was released, aPriori is compatible with the latest releases in terms of both Creo and windchill.
All right, thank you. Another question here, what about cost sync for actuals, aPrioris for exchange with SAP, for instance?
For actuals, so actual costs. So aPriori does have the ability to import targets, for example, target costs or actual costs so that those can reside alongside the estimated costs generated by aPriori. So yes, we've flexibility to pull in data targets or actuals so that you can do comparisons. And the graph that I showed in the video there of target costs is an example of a target being pulled in, right? That could also include an actual, so you have that visibility.
Yeah, so I think it's mainly if you do a BOM roll-up, let's say a BOM cost roll-up from an entire assembly, that you have your purchased parts, which have a fixed cost typically, or a negotiated cost. You have that visibility also within the aPriori analysis environment as well.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, David. Also another question here, can aPriori work with multi-CAD environments or other CADs besides Creo?
Yes, aPriori supports all major CAD formats, as well as neutral file formats such as STEP and JT and Parasolid.
Right, thanks. One other question here, looks very interesting for parts manufacturing and costing. Any support related to assembly?
So yes, aPriori can load in an assembly and have a roll-up of the cost of all of the individual components, but also take into consideration assembly operations such as welding or mechanical fastening or adhesive bonding, pick and place operations. So we looked at an individual part and the operations to build that part. At the assembly level, we can also simulate the manufacturing processes. So for example, with Creo, if an assembly is using the Creo weld functionality, those welds are automatically imported at the assembly level, and that MIG operation, whether it's manual or robotic, is all accounted for, the time associated with that, and the cost to actually perform that assembly operation.
To continue on that question, also the capability of having electronical or electrical components as well, because more and more these days, it's not just only mechanical, it's also electromechanical.
Sure, yes. So aPriori supports a very broad range. It's over 400 plus manufacturing processes and operations that it supports. On the mechanical side, so processes, typical processes, sheet metal forming, casting, forging, machining, composites, additive manufacturing. So broad capabilities on the mechanical side, but also on the electrical side. As you said, David, more and more products with electrification efforts and fully connected devices and all of that. Printed circuit board capabilities as well as wire harnessing can be can be simulated with aPriori. So on the PCBA side, pulling in a bill of material of components and then simulating the manufacturing process along with the cost of those components. And then the PCB itself, the raw board itself, we can pull in a Gerber file or an ODB++ file and simulate the manufacturing process there.
Thank you. Another question here also from the audience. What about integration to PLM system, like, Team Center and Unified?
So yes, we saw the connection with windchill, where the simulation can be automatically initiated, analyzed, pull input attributes from there, and push data back in. Similar capability is available with Team Center, for example. Yes.
All right. Right. Also, another question here. What about, the implementation and deployment approach, for aPriori? Who should be engaged, and what is the typical time frame?
Sure. So when we bring a new customer on board, aPriori, one of our major focuses, time to value. We currently are tracking at first value within the first couple of months of a deployment. So we start with a deployment with the mindset of we need to generate value for our customers, whether that's in sourcing with some wins through negotiation or some design wins. That really drives the implementation. We can actually start with the out-of-the-box product to start to generate insights, and typically it would be, we saw with the integration with Creo, that's an out-of-the-box integration. Windchill would be probably a second step to start thinking about the business process changes and the data storage and all that. But fundamentally, we have a team of implementation engineers, expert services engineers that provide ongoing support, with accounts managed by customer success managers. And on the customer side, we really need the expert users, someone to look after the data. For example, we had a question about materials, right? That's one of the basic initial configurations that would be done with aPriori, is making sure the materials database is loaded up with appropriate materials, the right machines are in the database. So fundamentally, the implementation starts by leveraging the product day one with the out-of-the-box solution, and then looking at really what are the basic configurations, and then further working with our customers in the case where perhaps there's an integration with windchill, with aPriori Generate, working with the internal PLM management teams that are looking after that system to make sure the right attributes are there, what information needs to be pushed back.
Yeah. And you have a broad range of manufacturing capabilities in your digital factories out of the box. But how is the data itself being maintained? I mean, the out-of-the-box data, because cost is changing over time, like labor cost, material cost, and so on. So how does aPriori provide the up-to-date versions to their customer base?
Sure, absolutely. And yes, of course, material rates, labor rates, lots of fluctuation there. So aPriori digital factories, we actually have an internal team that on a daily basis is tracking changes to labor rates, energy costs, material costs, and all of that. We also work with third-party data providers, consulting company out of Germany, Kirchhoff. On the sustainability side, we work with EcoInvent to take their data. And in general, aPriori's data, we're looking at it continuously, and we issue updates to the digital factories on a quarterly basis. So 4 times a year, updates to the data are generated, and customers at any point can make tweaks and create digital factory definitions of their own, starting from the baselines.
Thanks.
I will pick one last question before time is out here, but it's a hot topic, of course, and that relates to how do you actually utilizing the power of generative AI supporting your solutions today? And I mean, what's happening? I mean, 2-3 years out from now, or can you elaborate?
Sure. Yes, a very hot topic indeed. And what we see is aPriori is generating a lot of valuable data on designs, the manufacturing cycle times, the costs associated with that. So first is really leveraging that data. An area that there's been a lot of interest in lately is in the multidisciplinary optimization space, right? So being able to simulate various designs, push that data through CAE tools, thermal analysis, structural analysis, but also through aPriori in an automated fashion so that hundreds, if not thousands of designs can be analyzed and really help bubble up those insights to cost and CO2 within that process. And you could envision developed AI routines that now take that data and intelligently can process it. So it really, from our perspective, it's all about the data being generated and the potential for that to be used in AI routines.
Thank you. So if you have any additional questions, I mean, you have Steven's and David's contact details below here. And unfortunately, we are running out of time. So many thanks everyone for joining. And of course, a special thanks, for you, Steve and David, for sharing a lot of, good insights here. So with that, I hope to see you back already next week for the 17th of May, for the next session on PTC Talks, for a session about a traceability research product with Volvo and Chalmers University of Technology, where also PTC has been quite engaged as well. So stay tuned for that and have a fantastic weekend, everyone.
Thanks. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye-bye.